Our purpose of doing this development of righteous men and women is that, as you know, ATLAH calls for righteous men, and obviously virtuous women. And we want to spend more time, if you will, focusing on what that means and how to attain that, but more specifically, to stop the thieves, people that are liberal in their political and religious and social views. By liberals, I mean that they are not constrained by the commandments of God. Many of them, liberals, don't believe in God, and they're not constrained by social norms of parent and child or the authority. They're very liberal. In other words, most anything goes. And then, of course, we want to be able to counter the influence of what we refer to, especially since our school is, as it is, the ATLAH High School and Great Tomorrow's Elementary School. We want to stop the power of the pinch-nosed Negro. Pinch-nosed Negroes, pardon me, are Negroes who are black people who have gone through a series of social identities. When you look at and by the way, we're going to treat, Truth had a question, and one of the last questions that we did not address regarding watching pornography and homosexuality and how they're intertwined or interrelated. We're going to get to Truth's question. And we also want to state that those of you who may have questions, you can forward them to Matron Farr if I raise something that stimulates a question within you, if you just have a question regarding these issues. And Matron Farr will forward that question to me, and we'll try to treat it on the air if we have appropriate time today. But we want to treat Truth's questions about pornography and interrelated homosexuality. But going back to the pinch-nosed Negroes, and for you, those of you are teachers and students and everything, you have to understand from a perspective that if you want to refer to people as black or African-American or Negroes, or they have gone through nearly every generation a change of their identity, which represents gross instability. I mean, white people have been white people since the dawn of the American Revolution, since they sailed the ocean blue, since Columbus. You know, they've not gone from white to something else. Either they're white or what. The same thing with Jewish people. But black people are so immature. Well, at first they were colored, then said, well, that was the name that was given to them. All right. Then they were Negroes, said that was the name that was given to them. Then they gave themselves the name of blacks. And after that, gave themselves the name of African Americans, which represents they really have no idea who they are. But there's a group within that group called the pinch-nosed Negroes who essentially want to be white. That's just all there is to it. They admire white people's accomplishments. They admire white people's neighborhoods. They admire white people's design and architecture, and they want to be white. And so what they do, and those are categorized pinch-nosed Negroes, who in essence despise who they are. They're not proud of their hair. They're not proud of the fact, as Jasmine Arbery, the sister of Ahmed, slain Ahmed Arbery, said his nose was broad, his skin was dark. And even though when Hamite people identified themselves as black and proud, they really weren't. It was a mantra that they soon dropped for African American. And now they're talking about Black Lives Matter. So I want to be able to help you defend yourself from all this rhetoric coming at you that is just as dangerous as homosexuality itself. So that's why these sessions that we're having with the entire school are important. But what I want to do now is look at the question that was raised by Truth, who raised, what happens if homosexuals never find out that homosexuality is a sin? Well, the first thing about that question, Truth, and well, there's a second question. Will they still go to hell, or would God give them a chance to know? For all of our students, and maybe we have, and teachers as well, and if this then gets translated and become a video that you watch at home with parents, with your parents, students and parents, or children and parents, and to everyone listening. First of all, when you're dealing with issues, such as a question such as what Truth is just raised about, what if they never know? Will God still exalt them? The question doesn't have validity because maybe the power of the liberal media, the power of pensionados, Negroes, and the power of homosexuality or LGBTQ itself is so powerful that the truth can never get to some of these people, and they may never know that homosexuality is wrong. And if they hear someone like me, which is so critical, which is so absolutely critical truth, if they hear someone like me teaching that it's wrong, but there is this megaphone, this mega power, these mega churches, these mega politicians, these Barack Hussein Obama, who is a mega man in the world, these Al Sharpton, who are these mega people in the world, these athletes who are mega people, Dwayne Wade, who is a mega basketball star. When to the person looking at these persons who's saying it is right, is just, make me look like an idiot. And so even truth, even though they hear that it's wrong, it's hard for them to accept what I'm saying over what Dwayne Wade is saying, over what Obama is saying, over what most pensionados, black Negroes are saying in general, or what churches are saying. So in that regard, although they've heard, they still don't know the truth. And I'm coming back to that. But let me just do a couple of things I think is important. Just as a matter of scholastics and training, anytime you're asked a question, you need to frame the answer. You need to set the foundation for the answer, because the answer, many times an answer is just given as you understand the answer, but you understand it from already a foundation. For instance, one of the problems with people who are Hamites under the age of 50 is that they have no basic understanding of truth. They have been raised, many of them raised by crack mamas and crack daddies, or raised by runaway parents, raised in a very liberal understanding, and they don't have a sound foundation of understanding the truth. And they've been raised in a period where under the Henry David Thoreau or Dr. Martin Luther King, who has suggested that blacks ought to protest, blacks ought to demand their history, blacks ought to demand their rights. So they've been, the last 50 years has been the meals spiritually that they have eaten. And they have no further foundation of a greater understanding of humanity in general, going back several centuries or millenniums even, or going back to the Bible. They're completely bereft of that. So you have to frame the question. So let's get started by saying this truth. Homosexuality, by definition, is satanic. It's as simple as that. It is satanic. There's no way you can do anything other than that. And there's nobody you know anywhere, no matter how whether it be Barack Hussein Obama or anybody else, can argue against this. It is satanic. And I'll tell you why it's satanic. It is satanic because it is not something that God created. Now, God did create sex. Oh, yes, he did. That was God's idea of sex. But God's idea of sex and God's creation of sex was man with woman. That was God's, and he passed it on to not just with man, but God made that consistent throughout all of the mammal or mammary gland or the fleshly kingdom. That is to say, he made that a mandate between horses, or between cows, or between, rabbits, or between whatever. It is a consistent, because it goes back to creation. Sexuality, by God, is consistent throughout all of flesh or mammary gland or created fleshly creation. Homosexuality, that is man with man, was created by Satan. Now, because of the time constraints, I'm not going to go back to Genesis and read it, Genesis chapter 6, but you'll do it in your own. The fallen angels who had been kicked out of heaven following Satan, after being here for a while, starting having sex with each other because sex was the dominant thing on planet Earth. Now, this is the early stages. You're only 6 chapters into Genesis. This is really, really, really early creation time. But you got the fallen angels here. You've got Lucifer, Satan rather, who's gone into the garden and deceived Eve. And now you've got this whole state of death and sin. But in chapter 6, the fallen angels were having sex with themselves. Now, angels are always of the male gender. There's never a female angel. But having been put out of heaven, having find themselves on earth, and watching men and women have sexual intercourse, some of these fallen angels saw that the daughters of men, and you can read this in Genesis chapter 6, decided that they wanted to have sex with these daughters. And so it was. Now, that was not homosexuality. It was satanic sexuality, but as long as it was male to female. But it didn't stop there, because the Satanists, the fallen angels, really had no, if you will, guidelines about who they would have sex with. Previously, they had been having sexual intercourse with themselves before they started doing it with women. They had been having sexual gratification. And then the fallen angels were superior enough in understanding and spirit, whereby they realized they can transform themselves and they can inhabit the body or the flesh or God's human. A fallen angel can inhabit the body of a man or a woman. And so what they did was they then began to do what we would call as take over the dominance and possess a man. And when they possessed that man, they would make him have sex with another man so they could get the gratification. The fallen angel's spirit would be inside of this human creation of God. So, and making this man think in his mind, making this man lust in his mind, making this man desire in his mind to have sex with another man. Really, it was a fallen angel inside of him, putting those ideas inside of him. And so he would have sex with another man. Thus began homosexuality. But not just that. These fallen angels then got inside of the women or the daughters of God. And because they were male, they made these women want to have sex with other women. And so that's the genesis of homosexuality. Homosexuality really got started before the preaching of righteousness, if you can believe that. Righteousness and Noah came along to break up all of this with the teaching of righteousness. But homosexuality dates all the way back to the Garden of Eden. It is an old satanic practice, and it's one of the first things that Satan did. But that's how it got started. It got started that way. Mr. Engineer, I'm going to ask you to pull up Genesis chapter 6 anyway, because I think I need to nail this down for every mind, because Satan would fight this greatly. And for those of you who have been around the Bible and the church for quite some time, you might notice in Genesis chapter 19 that when God got ready to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, because really, homosexual practices, because it wasn't created of God, it's an abomination, and it has no redeemable, it cannot be redeemed. Now, can a homosexual person be saved? They can confess it, and I talked about that last time, and I'll do more detail about that. But it's like there is no redeemable factors. There is nothing that God, who didn't create, there's nothing that God can do in redeeming something that was created by the devil. The only redeemable principles or practices that God, even God's power has, is limited to that which he created. God would never sanctify lying, which is the other thing that Satan created. But Mr. Engineer, pull up Genesis chapter 6 and let me read it for just a second to people so everybody can know how old homosexuality is, how it got started. First, it got started with angels having sexual intercourse with each other. Then they decided, well, let's have the sex with the daughters. And from there, they started having sex with men. Then they started men having sex with men and women having sex with women. Verse 1, and it came to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, the sons of God. Now, this statement here is early on in the writings of Moses. Normally that G would be a small g, but that these sons of God who were angels, these sons of God who were angels, not, if you notice the first verse talked about the men roll back to verse number 1, Mr. Engineer, that it became to pass when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, daughters were born unto them. But now there's another category of personality on earth, and that's the sons of God. These are fallen angels. They saw the daughters of these men, that they were fair, and took them wives, all which they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not always strive with man, for that he is flesh, and yet his days shall be 120 years. All right, okay. And that's good enough, Mr. Engineer. So the other item of Genesis is that when God got ready to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, the dwelling place of fallen angels, he sent angels into that city to rescue Lot. You might be mindful of that. All right, so homosexuality is satanic. It is unredeemable. It isn't, God is not going to acknowledge something that he himself did not create. It's another kingdom. It's opposite of God's plan. The truth is of God. God created all things. Life is a creation, alive rather, is a creation of Satan. So God sent angels to destroy Sodom. Now, truth, with respect to your question about pornography. Again, you always want to frame out to give the foundation to make your arguments receivable, because again, one of the problems I have as a pastor, all you students, is that most of you are too young to know the truth. You're too young to know. You know, a lot of you run around and talk about you want black history. No, you don't. You don't want that because it's not favorable to you. But the premise here is that if you don't know the truth, if you don't know the foundation of things, the foundation of slavery is biblical. It's ordained of God, it's called of God. That's the foundation of slavery. So if you want to know history, go back to Africa, go back to the days when elders and kings used to sell their children to white men with blonde hair and blue eyes. And actually put them on the ship and tell their children, I'll see you later. That's the history, but they don't want to know that. But pornography is public mass marketing of prostitution of both sexes. That's what porn is. It's mass marketing. It's a marketing program. You take pornography, take prostitution, whether it would be male prostitutes and women prostitutes, whatever. It was usually one-on-one kind of an event. The film industry has now made it a mass marketing event. It can be marketed through through visual aids, through all kinds of films and tapes and magazines and movies, etc. Nearly every movie on television these days, unless it's really a family movie, has prostitution in it. Now they'll say, warning, this has sexual content, violence, drug use, alcohol, foul language. Well, it should say prostitute. It should say pornography. But pornography, with respect to Truth's question of people who watch pornography, it's mass prostitution, but it's multiple sex partners. And yes, if you watch pornography, you engage in sex with both partners. You do. You have to. That's what it's designed to do, and there's no way of getting around it. The problem is, however, is that sex itself, from God, was never intended to be a multiple partner, if you will, homo partner sexual. It was never intended. Sexual encounters in its natural God-ordained form was to be intimate. It was to be something was private. It's to be an expression of love and devotion and intimacy with that particular person. It was never meant to be a public act. God never meant it to be that. I mean, it should be no more of a public act than you're going to the bathroom and having to do both 1 and 2. That's not a public act. There are things that should not be marketed. I mean, so if people all of a sudden start marketing people who have to go to the bathroom with number 2, and all of a sudden they put it up, on the internet and everybody can watch it, what is that? And that's what pornography is. And so male and female are intercounted, and then of course, as Truth raised the question, obviously there's pornography. Well, it's just male with male or female with female. And though people themselves are not physical contact, you're interacting with them. Yes, you are. If you watch it, you're interacting. If you watch it, you're having sex with them. And so that answers that question. Now, I don't know if there have been any questions come forward as of yet. I think that we have one question here. Let me just frame this out because I have more things to say about that. But let me just pause before going forward. Zipporah, I think, raises a question. Why won't people move on with their lives and admit the truth? What is their reason for corrupting the world with nonsense? Why are they keeping homosexual in the world when it isn't necessary? We all know that they can't make any babies in the process. Okay, so Truth raised that question. Why? To set the foundation if you're going to answer a question, always try to make sure that you've got a foundation. I struggle, Zipporah, with the things I say are outside of the intellectual vocabulary or spiritual or physical or mental encyclopedia of most people under the age of 60 or 70. So when I talk, they think I'm crazy because I'm speaking from a foundation of which they have no knowledge. Even if their parents weren't crack babies. I mean, if you're anywhere between 15 and 20 and 35 or 40, you're a crack baby. You are, especially if you're Hamite. You were raised in the era where crack was running wild. And if you're 60 or 70, you're a heroin baby, when heroin was king. These social, if you will, destructive forces influence the way people think. The people under 58 years of age now think that white people are responsible for everything that's wrong with them because that's what the schools have taught. That's what critical race theory is all about. That's what the neighborhoods, that's what the civil rights movement was all about. That's what all the people who rose to popularity, like Dr. King, Jesse Jackson, Obama, who obviously that the world recognized these people are great, but they were expounding this whole ideal that white people are responsible for everything that's wrong with black people. It's not true. It's nowhere near true. But that's where you were raised. That's the neighborhood and community. So my struggle here in dealing with these age groups is that I'm coming from a totally different foundation of understanding, of truth that's biblical. And so therefore, it's very difficult to reach them. But try to answer your question, Zipporah, is why won't people move on with their lives and admit the truth? Well, first of all, sexual practice is an intimate practice, and it's something that the body naturally wants to do. You have to understand there's nothing wrong with having natural sexual desires. They just need to be channeled the right way. And as constrained as I can say this, everybody's got them. Everybody. And and there's nothing wrong to have them as long as they're channeled in the right direction. I mean, there's nothing wrong to have an appetite to want to eat food, but there might be something wrong when you want to eat feces. That's not appropriate. It's not nutritional. It's wrong. You can say, well, the feces was once food that somebody ate, and now it's become processed. You can't identify the potatoes from the chicken leg, but it's still there when it comes out as feces. Well, that's a pretty crude argument, but I have to understand. But you don't want to eat that. You don't want to eat that. You don't. So sexual desires are natural. So therefore, there is no moving away from sexual desires. But here's the answer to your question, Zipporah. The problem is what's being pumped into humanity. And the reason why Barack Hussein Obama is perhaps the world's most wicked man is because he used the power of the presidency not to build great neighborhoods that were once ghettos, not to build great educational institutions, not to build alliances, not to walk the length and breadth of Africa, especially around the equator nations, and formulate business corporations and ideals and hospitals and uplift of the African people and training and et cetera. He didn't do that. He could have. He could have. But the one thing he did do is he promoted this deviant behavior called sexual and so how can you walk away from it when everybody is walking into it? Everybody. And you're handicapped. That is to say, you've got an issue at hand that goes before you make a move towards homosexuality. You have a natural desire to do sexual things. That's natural, but it must be done in the right way. Man with woman, and woman with man. And then when it's done, when it's put in that truth, or Zipporah rather, when it's put there, it is approved of God. But the problem is this, in terms of what's your other question, is that so therefore it isn't easy, and one of the things I'm trying to do with you students is to stop these liberals, homosexuals, and pensioners, Negroes from flooding your mind with the fact that their way of life is right and that Pastor Manning is a hate preacher. He's a mean man. He ain't for our first black president. He ain't for the black people. And on and on and on the lies and the nonsense and the propaganda. They got the televisions. They got the basketball stars. They got the Chef Currys. They've got the media. They've got the schools. And I'm here all by myself, a voice crying out, trying to say, no, you're going in the wrong direction. But it's hard to hear my voice. And then once they plant that seed in you, Zipporah, of want to test sex with woman, you will begin to hate me because when I speak it against it, you think I hate you. You think that I'm against you. You will call me a hate preacher because your love, and not Zipporah, I'm not saying that you're going to do this, you understand. But the reason why they call me a hate preacher is because I'm speaking against what they love to do. And that's their definition of hate. It isn't a traditional Webster definition of hatred. Their definition, the reason why they refer to me as a hate preacher is because I'm speaking against that which they love to do, which is wrong. And so they call that hate. You don't want me to do what I want to do. I want to have sex as a man with another man, and you're against it. You're a hater. You're a hater. You're a hater, Manning. Or if I say that black people who are Hamites need to accept the biblical prophecy of who they are and what they've been and how they have been raised in these deranged, if you will, ideas and concepts that are anti-God, and so therefore they are failures no matter what. Even if they get the money to become a Kanye West and become a billionaire, you're still a miserable failure. You're still a miserable human being. And black men and black women are at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to family values. Black children are raised by themselves. Hell, you'd be better off being raised by apes than have the parents. You got a parent under 50 years of age. You'd be better off raised by apes and monkeys who have a greater understanding of fidelity. A lioness and her cubs raises children better than black people and black men and women raise their children because of their demented ideas about liberalism and about all the other. So true, Zipporah, your cousin, it isn't that easy to walk away, but I'm trying to help you, trying to elevate you. Don't let these people tell you I'm a hater. Why are they keeping homosexuality in the world when it is necessary? Well, you may think it isn't necessary, but I don't think you're going to be able to convince any others that it isn't. So I think that's the only other question I have. I don't see any other questions on the roster. So let me get back to understanding that in God's idea of this is something that Satan created. And it's not authentic. It's not original. And it really doesn't fit into the creation process. Homosexuality is not an anomaly. It doesn't fit. It's not a part of what God created. It just isn't. It would be like promoting a man born with a steel rod running through his ears. Well, God didn't create that. But here's a man sticking a steel rod through from one ear to the other ear. He doesn't die, whatever. And so all of a sudden, everybody wants to put a steel rod in their ear. I was teaching the other day about tattoos. It's ridiculous. God don't want you to be some sort of a walking announcement board. Why are you writing on your body? You want to write on something? Get a iPad. Get a piece of paper. What kind of fool writes on his body or draws animals on his body? It's almost like saying Elsie the cow would draw a picture of men on her body. It would be all the other cows looking and say, Elsie, what's wrong with you, girl? What is this with these tattoos? What is this? It is not something that God did not design us with writing on our bodies. Anyway, so I think it's important for us to understand the power of pornography, and I want to try to help you young people. I don't want you to go out here like a lot of these other students that we've had. They have gone buck wild out there. They are buck wild out there. I don't want this to happen to you. And perhaps I should have spent more time trying to teach them. But most of them that have gone buck wild would not have listened to me anyway because it was during the Obama era. Listen, you young people and parents. Obama made black people have wet dreams while they were walking the street. A wet dream is an actual sexual orgasm, that happens naturally to you while you're asleep. You're not having sexual partner, but your mind is going in that direction, and it actually brings you to a sexual climax, if you will. I swear I have never seen black people act so crazy than they did over Obama. Now, parenthetically, are y'all watching these white people, they're Japheth people, act crazy over Trump? Have y'all seen them? Have y'all seen the news? Maybe some of y'all not as news savvy and you don't follow this every day. But Lord have mercy, I have never seen Japheth people act as crazy about anybody. Not Ronald Reagan, not John Kennedy, not George Washington, not even the Beatles. These Japheth people have gone crazy over Donald Trump. But he is the trigger of the tribulation. It's a satanic move. But I say to you, and you listen to me very carefully, I say you the truth and the whole truth, Zipporah, and everybody else. These black people went crazier than white people over Obama. I swear, the fact that when you see me and hear me, I am a miracle. That I'm still alive. These black people went crazy over that man. They went crazy. They gave up everything. They went crazy and still do, to some degree. Still do. So it's important that I don't lose y'all. It's important. And so these young people that were in the Obama era, they are buck wild out there. They out there now. You ought to see them. Some of them that are students from here, girls have hooked up with one another. That's right. They have hooked up. They used to be classmates. Now they're lovers. I don't want that to happen to you. I don't want it to happen to the young men. There's a couple other things I think it's important that we understand about this whole business of homosexuality. It's an abomination. Mr. Engineer, if you pull up Leviticus chapter 20, verse 3, the Bible declares that if man lieth with mankind as with woman, that they shall surely be put to death. It's an abomination. Now, abomination is 3 degrees above just regular sin. You know, you steal something, all right, that's a sin. You know, you lie, that's a sin. You know, but homosexuality is 3 degrees worse than, and there's only one response to it in that regard, and that is abomination. You should surely be put to death. And before our time is up today, I want to read. Can you find it, Miss India? Do you have it? If you got it, bring it up so we can be able to. But let me say this while we're finding that verse to young people. You're going to be tempted. You're going to be tempted. And sexual temptation is natural. There's nothing wrong with having sexual desires. There's nothing wrong, if you're a wife, you're a woman wanting to have a husband. There's nothing wrong if you're a man wanting to have a wife. There's nothing wrong with that. That's God ordained. That's God's plan. Now, the devil's plan is to do it homo, meaning of the same grouping. But you're going to be tempted for the best. But here, can I share this with you? Write this down and make sure that you always remember this. Even when you're tempted, I told the event when I was in prison that I was tempted to do a homosexual act. I was tempted. I didn't do it. God knows I didn't do it. God knows I didn't. But I was tempted. I mean, you're in prison, you're there, you haven't had a woman in years, and you hear the moaning and groaning going on. Everybody else in there doing it. Well, not everybody, but a lot of people are doing it, right? The first same-sex marriage I ever saw happen in 1977. This homosexual man by the name of Bahamas Mama got married to some other guy out on the yard at Reefer State Prison. Yeah, and some guy formed the marriage, and so the reason why, because this guy wanted Bahamas Mama all by himself, because Bahamas Mama was having sex with everybody. But I was tempted. Now, I didn't do it, but you're going to be tempted. Here's what you have to do, and here's the thing that saved me. You don't believe that homosexuality, and even as a young man, I understood this. Don't believe that homosexuality is either love, because it isn't. It cannot be. Justified, that is to say, that there is nothing wrong with it, whether it isn't love or not. It has a clean slate before God in terms of it being justified, or that it is right, and that God embraces it. That God embraces it, that God does not have anything against it if you do it, no more so than if you have sex with a woman if you're a man. That's not true. Know that even though you yourself may be tempted, understand, never give in. Giving into the sexual act that's not the issue. Presenting your body to another person of the same sex. That's not the most evil thing. The most evil thing is permitting your mind to say this is right. When you let your mind say, and a preacher stands up and marries two men, or a mother says, this is my son, and I'm going to approve of it, that is worse than the body contact. It is the mind. That's why Jesus said, even if you think about having sex with a person, you've already committed adultery. It isn't the body contact. Now, you don't want to do the body contact. You don't want to do it. But that's not the worst thing. The worst thing is by saying, this is right. And Pastor Manning is a hater. All right, I see that we got more questions. Is that right? Let me see what I have over here. Hold tight for 1 second, everybody, because my time is just about up for today. All right, what do I have here now? I think I got a question here from Honor. Said, did Obama do the most wicked thing that this world has ever experienced by starting homosexuality and things like that? Yes. Yes. Wars, rumors of wars. For instance, listen, David was a warrior. Joshua fought the battle of Jericho and the wall came tumbling down. So wars within themselves and there have been major wars, and, Mao Zedong killed 60 million Chinese. Vladimir Lenin killed 20 million Jews. Wars. Those are bad things, but they're not as bad as homosexuality. They're not anywhere near. So, Honor, this is an excellent question, what Obama did. Remember, God said he is the son of Satan. I mean, he is the highest of all fallen entities that represent eternal, global evil. He is the highest of all. He's even higher than Trump in terms of evil. So, yes, he is. And that's why it was so important that I fight him and that I still fight him. But the other thing is that he came in the presence of a Hamite because Hamites had the greatest morality against homosexuality. If there were people that just were not going to go down that road, it was Hamites. So that's why when Satan presented him, he presented him in that category, but not fully. Mariah writes, why do people turn homosexual? All right, it's a question. Why do people do it? First of all, there's several ways where that can happen, Mariah. One is that they have not been told the truth. They have not been preached the truth, and they have been tempted. And they yielded to their temptations. And let's take a person like Deacon Remnant Williams, for instance, who had no idea what sex was at all at 5 years old. But his uncle made him do oral sex, Mariah, with him at 5 years. They told him what to do and how to do it. He had no idea what it was. But the more he did it, the more it became a lifestyle. And he did it till he was about 14 years old. Well, 9 years of that's what you do. And he became a part of that process. And when he came to our church, he was in his 40s. And he came here specifically because he wanted me to help him get out of that lifestyle. So that's one of the reasons why. But the major reasons why it is today is because people are promoting it as okay. There's nothing wrong with it. The churches are promoting it. I mean, and of course, the most powerful man on the planet in terms of Satan's kingdom is Obama. And he is promoting it. And he's convinced grandmamas. Listen, I can tell you, people who were 80 years old who will never, but when Obama came along and said it was okay, they all said, well, if Obama said it's okay. That's what Janasia's mother said to me when Janasia was just a sweet little girl. She was just sweet and young and beautiful and talented. Oh, man, Janasia was somebody. But her mama stood up in the church and said to me, who do you think you are? Obama said that homosexual is okay, and you're saying it isn't? Obama's the president. Obama's our first black president. And she excoriated me in the church. Anyway, all right. So, Mariah, that's why they do it. Gabe asked, could you imagine how different things would be if Obama wasn't president? Absolutely. First of all, our church would be completely different. You know, a number of people were falling by the wayside. We would probably be well into owning most of this property. Most of the people will have multi-million dollar. You know, these brownstones are beautiful. Some of y'all have, been to my Elizabeth and I's dwelling place. Is that right? And, we have a duplex. Is that right? And it's a fairly comfortable place. It's as beautiful as living in Beverly Hills. It is. Some of these brownstones in Harlem, if not most of them, are beautiful houses. And God gave them. But Obama came along and said, you don't want that. You don't want Manning. You want homosexuality. You want black presidential powers. And the world would be different. It would be different. But I have to say to you, Gabe, we're not going to quit. We're not going to stop preaching, and I absolutely stomp down. No. By the way, if you understand the level of evil of Obama, please try to understand what he will do to try to stop me, kill me, take me down. You've seen people do all kinds of things. You know things that people have done to me that I don't know. They've told you. They've discussed it with you. I don't even know. We know some things have gone on in the newspapers. We know how people have tried to set me up and destroy me. You know, we all kind of, but you know things that I don't know. Think of what a miracle it is that I was able to stand up to Obama, and still I can walk to that pulpit every Saturday morning and preach. No, when I go up there, it's a day of miracles that God has been able to give Pastor Manning the strength to fight these things that have tried to take him down. They've tried to bring him down, but he's still standing. Know that and understand that, Gabe, in terms of where I am at present in Obama. Zarek writes, what is the worst sin possible? Well, the worst sin possible is blasphemy. And Elder LaFleur raised a question about that. Thank you, Zarek, for that. Blasphemy, and it has to be well-aware blasphemy, and it has to come from a satanic response. But blasphemy is when you call the Holy Ghost a liar. Jesus said in the coming of the Holy Ghost, he will not speak of himself. He will only speak those things of which I've said, which flies in the face of those people who say that Jesus is speaking something different from what God said. Jesus only spoke the things that Moses said. Moses only spoke the things that God said. The Holy Ghost, who Jesus sent as the Comforter, only speaks the things that Jesus said, that Moses said, that God said. There's no difference. They're not running their own religion. They're setting up their own denominations. But when the Holy Ghost says something, and you say that's a lie, that is blaspheming, and God just don't tolerate it. There are a couple of things, Eric, I think needs to be important, needs to be clear. God does not tolerate you touching his prophet. Whether the prophet is right or wrong, that's not the issue. He's not yours. Touch not mine anointed, neither do my prophet any harm. Never harm a prophet. And the reason why that's important is because he's God's front man. And if God lets you just do anything you want to do to a prophet, say anything you want to say, cuss him any way you want to cuss him, deny him any way you want, why would anybody want to be a servant of the Lord? But the other higher and the greatest sin that anybody can ever do, is to blaspheme against the Holy Ghost. And it's very difficult to do it. You have to willingly know that you are purposing to constrain the Holy Ghost. It really has to be a conspiracy. Let's say, for instance, I get up and say something. I say, well, ATLAH, guess what God said? And you say, that God said. How do I know God just said that? Yeah, I don't believe you. That's not blasphemy. That's just ignorance. It's not blasphemy. But if you know that the Holy Ghost is speaking, if you know that's what God said, and you conspire to try to destroy it, then that's blasphemy. So most people say things and do things, and then later on they find out better or they repent, et cetera, et cetera. But blasphemy is a sin that you are immediately sentenced to hell and then to the lake of fire. And in most cases, I don't know anybody who's blasphemed, and I've been around for quite some time. I know people said a whole lot of things, but I don't really know anybody that's blasphemed because most people, you have to be on a high spiritual level. For instance, Satan blasphemed. And the reason why he's put out of heaven is because he rose up against the power and the authority of God. He will never, ever be forgiven. He will never, ever be forgiven. I will say this, though, and I wanted to be clear. Homosexuality and contact, it is not blasphemy, but it's pretty close. It's close. It's close. For instance, if you start having homosexual activity and say, God created this for us to do, you're very close to never, ever seeing the gates of heaven. You're very close to blaspheming. So I wanted to be able to have these lessons with all of you. We've lost so many people. And I want you to pray for me because even your parents don't understand. Many of you, their minds have been whitewashed by the pension-nosed Negroes. And you have to understand that, look at most of these black men when they get money. By the way, I want to be able to talk about Celeste Estes that committed suicide yesterday. If you know about her, the young model and lawyer. But look at these people. When they get money, they don't want to live around black people. They go by themselves. LeBron James got 2 houses. One, $34 million, the other $20 million. And all of them, the leader of Black Lives Matter, those lesbian women that lead Black Lives Matter, $15 million house in a white neighborhood. These Van Jones, these Kanye West, they all marry white women. Black people hate each other. Now they talk black and we're proud, Black Lives Matter. It's a lie. Black lives don't matter. You can kill a black man today. And it'll take the ambulance 2 hours to get there to pick him up. And black folk will walk right by him on the street. It's a lie. It's satanic. The mindset of black people. And the more education they get, the more money they earn, the whiter they want to become. They don't earn money because they want to come back to the neighborhood and they want to get white. They want to be white. They think their money can make that's why this teaching of Hamai. And what that girl, that Jasmine Arbery said the other day about her brother, Ahmed Arbery, that was slain by those 3 white men down there in Georgia last year, a year ago, that my brother had dark skin that glistened in the sun and curly hair, which I refer to as nappy hair, and a big broad nose. That's a black man. That's who we are. We got short, curly hair. We don't have stringy hair, blonde and all that kind of stuff hanging down our shoulders and rubbing on our butts. It's short, it's dark, and sometimes there's very little of it. But that's ours. It's ours. Our noses are thick. That's right. And so are our lips. The better to kiss you with, my baby. So this is what we're up against. I don't want you to let these people get you. They have destroyed the world. They have destroyed the future of children. I'll see how the Lord will treat next week's tomorrow's opportunity. But thank you, students, for your chiming in. Thank you for your questions. I think there's one more question here. Do you know when homosexuality will end? Well, Zipporah, it started before righteous preaching. In fact, righteous preaching was the response to homosexuality. And it was Noah who began to preach again. And homosexuality was so powerful there. Not one person joined Noah's church. Not one, 120 years. And Noah, we ain't gonna do it. At any rate, I have to wrap this up. Thank you, students, so very much. Y'all asked some excellent questions. Stay with me. Don't let these demons. I don't care if your parents try to tell you to talk. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Wait on Jesus, because he's coming back again.
When you see the school called ATLAH, you see righteous boys and girls, always standing with the sword of the mighty God, as righteous leaders all over the world. We'll never turn to the left or the right. We shall prevail in all our fights. And we will say, like Honorable Manning says, ATLAH, that's what God says. And we will say, like Paul our